Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So, Tony, tell us, you're in a pretty cool place. You've got your masterminds or a consultant. You've got all kinds of stuff that you're able to do from all of your vast history and knowledge. And my first question for you is, have you developed those skills, or do you think that was always in you? Like that was just who you were from small childhood to present. This is just who you are, and you're just being you.
I think that I was always a teacher. I think that even when I was a kid, I was always the leader of my friend circles, right?
Mm.
And I always was fascinated with learning new things and then really diving into those things and becoming as good as I could be at those things. And then I just really couldn't wait to teach my friends to do that. So I think that I've always wanted to be a teacher. Even back when I was in college, I was a substitute teacher in local high schools and things like that. But I didn't want the teacher income. My mom was a cafeteria worker in the public school system her entire career. So I was very familiar with the school district and what they paid. And I knew what substitutes made. Sometimes we made more than the actual teachers did.
Wow.
And so I said, that's just not the financial life I want to go through after watching my parents struggle. So I decided that I wanted to go to school. And when I tell you you want to go make six figures, they said go be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. So I said, okay, I like cars. And I think I'll go be an engineer. I think I'll go do something with cars. And that's the pursuit I have. But even when I was working in engineering, I was always a teacher. I was always helping people. I was always mentoring people. And it's just who you are. I think that some people want to teach, some people don't.
I agree. I feel the same way. I was always that person that was helping people my whole life in whatever capacity. So I think it's great when we can land in professions that enable us to do what is innately in us. So how is cars and engineering related? Like I don't know. I'm super naive in this area, but are they related, or is that just something you put together?
No, they are. There's several branches of engineering. You got civil engineering, which kind of does the roads and the bridges and buildings and things like that. And you've got electrical engineering, which also has spin-offs like computer engineering. You also have uh, chemical engineering, which is all the chemical refineries and understanding like laboratory type things. And I was mechanical engineering. So anything that has motion or machinery or anything like that is a mechanical engineer. So that's what generally is what's people that design and build the cars are mechanical engineers.
Yeah. So, but that's not, I mean, you had your love for cars, but that's not the big profession that you got into out of college. Is that right?
That's right. When I finally got really my senior year of college, I started to call and get some phone interviews back then. And really the big three and all their suppliers up in Detroit area, they just really weren't paying very much. That was really low pay. And at the time I was managing restaurants on the weekends and I was a welder and working full time in construction. And I was earning more than that what they were offering me to go to Detroit to work in engineering. I was like, that's kind of dumb, right? So I can
Yeah.
actually just stay here. I'm in Houston. It's the oil capital of the world. And so I decided I'll start talking to some oil companies because they were heavily recruiting me and
Mm.
they paid literally double what the automotive industry paid. And I got to stay here in my home city and actually be able to afford the cars that I wanted to be able to drive and design. So I was like, I'll just stay here and make double the money and actually buy the things instead of having to work on them.
Yeah, that's great. What was your first dream car that you bought?
My first dream car that I bought, man, I think it goes back to high school. I bought a 1969 Camaro
Mm.
by mowing yards and working at McDonald's and walking dogs and raking leaves. It was a $1,200 rust bucket. It wasn't no show queen. And, but it was my car that I bought when I was 14. And my dad and I, we restored that for an entire year. So when I turned 16, I had that car was done. It was a shoestring budget thing back then. I mean, I think we had $5,000 all the way into that car, which was, okay money back then,
Yeah.
late 80s.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my dream car, one of those, or a 55 Chevy. So I guess I started my automotive, life with my dream cars.
That's awesome. Did that make you the cool kid? Because I can imagine pulling up to school in that car made you a really cool kid.
Well, I grew up in a town that had a lot of affluence and a lot of rich kids had their brand new 5.0 Mustangs. And really the student parking lot was much nicer than the faculty parking lot at the school that I went to.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with money. We grew up in the crappiest houses in the crappiest neighborhood in town, but just because my parents wanted my sister and I to have that school system. So they made sacrifices to be able to get us in good schools. But I was one of the only kids that built their own car. So if it came to gearheads and understanding cars and why they work and actually taking care of their car because I built it and it was literally blood, sweat, and tears after football practice out there sanding on the cars and trying to fix things. And I took care of that car. It was a prized possession of mine. And I saw a lot of the kids that got new stuff handed to them. They just didn't take care of their stuff. They
Yeah.
beat it up. It was always broken. Like they just didn't understand. They didn't appreciate what they had. So yeah, I guess I was the cool hot rod guy.
Well, and also when people don't earn it, they have trash in their car, they don't care. Back then we used to smoke. They had, overflowing cigarette
Mm.
things in their car. You're right. People don't care the same way when they don't earn it in that manner. How cool was it for you to like bond with your father for that year and a half on that common goal together? That had to be really special.
It was challenging. My dad's a former Vietnam vet, a Marine sergeant, and he likes barking orders. And when you don't do things the right way, he'd always let you know. And so it was kind of difficult, but I was always learning. I was always the car fanatic. I mean, even since I was a kid, I was running around with Hot Wheels in my hands, probably making car noises before I could even speak. I think some of us are just like that. There's guys that like cars and there's guys that love cars. And I'm a fanatic about cars. I mean, I've got a 2,400 square foot shop out in the back with lifts and tire machines. I can do everything out there and build entire cars. And so I was always fascinated with learning things and why do things work and how do they go together and how they come apart and how to make things better or faster or stronger or things like that. So my dad was kind of learning as he went. He was always a handyman. My
Mm.
grandfather as well. They both liked cars, but they weren't like hot rodders. They fixed things that were broken. My dad and my grandfather, they can fix anything that was broken. And I learned that as myself. But
Awesome.
here we are restoring a car. A lot of things first time he's ever done it, right? And
Yeah.
we had to learn how to do the interior, how to rebuild the engine, how to pull out the transmission and get that refinished, and the gears and the axles. I mean, we spent a lot of time back then in junkyards and swap meets finding parts for a used car. Because back then it was a 20-year-old used Camaro. It wasn't really that special. They're high dollar nowadays, but back then it was kind of just a low dollar used rusty car. And so we didn't have eBay, we didn't have Craigslist.
Exactly.
Like if you
The
needed parts, you had to
internet,
go to the
YouTube, how
junkyard,
to
you had to
fix
go to
things.
swap meets, like you had to
Yeah.
call around and see if anyone's got something laying on the shelf. So it was a whole different way of restoring cars compared to today.
Yeah. Well, and even the learning, you didn't have a YouTube instructional video whenever you got stuck, or let me look that up on the internet really quick. You literally had to like figure it out, trial and
Yeah.
error as you went. How cool is that though? Like you think about the critical thinking that gave you that I think probably we lack a lot of in today's society because
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated with how things work and how things go together. And I was always good at taking things apart and putting things back together and not having any extra spare parts because that's always like, oh, where'd that come from? Right. But I think that also applies to a lot of the things I do in my life, as a business coach, as engineer. I've always looked at what is the challenge or the problem that we have and what's the potential solutions and what is the best solution that's going to give us the result that we desire. So yeah, me working backwards. Whenever people say like, we need to reverse engineer the process, and I'm thinking, are you an engineer? Because I am. Like, you're probably not. So you can't use that phrase. Like, that's kind of weird. You're using that, right? It's like, I don't use surgical phrases. I don't
Right.
use NFL phrases, but I literally do reverse engineer a lot of things. And that's something I've been educated in. And that's just, I think it's also just I don't know. I think it's the mind. I have an engineering mind. I look at things and I try to dissect things and figure out how to get to the bare essentials and how to get to the result.
I love that. Yeah, I do not my do not have a mechanical mind whatsoever, nor the patience to figure it out. So I appreciate people like you where that's just part of your DNA. It's really cool. I'm a bit envious, really. I figure everything out with communication. I figure I could just talk my way through anything and figure it out just with
Hey, that's a
communication.
skill on its own. If you can ask the right questions to the right people, you got good odds of success. And I think a lot of times people are just afraid to ask questions. They
Well,
don't want to
especially
look
these
like they're
days.
new at something, or they don't want to look like they're a rookie, or that they're stupid or ignorant. There's no dumb questions, especially if the intention is the right intention behind it.
Right. Well, and I think you nailed it because I know I've seen, go to different conferences and people ask questions and they already know the answer. They're just
Yeah.
like looking for someone to sort of confirm it or tell them something different than what they actually, because they don't want to hear it. And so I think you're right. The intention has to be there in order to get the right questions.
Yeah, I think sometimes you go to these conferences and people just want to raise their hand just because they want to hear themselves speak, or
Oh,
they want to get that B-roll clip from their
yeah.
buddy holding the cell phone next to them. Like, I'm going to stand up and say something to Gary Vee, capture this video. And
Yes.
you can't even hear what they say, but you get the video and you're like, oh, cool. I got to talk to Gary Vee. And, so yeah, again, it goes back to the intention, right?
Yep, 100%. And it drives me crazy because they consume all the time when there's legitimate people that could use help that aren't getting it because they want
Yeah.
to hear themselves talk. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Like
drives
if you
me
have
nuts.
someone that's up there making millions of dollars and you're asking them shit that you can find on Google, like you're wasting both of your time.
Right, right. Or mindset stuff where
Yeah.
the answer is going to be,
Yeah.
quit being a little bitch or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
you already know how this person's going to respond. So why are you asking this stupid question? Like, stop.
There you go. Like stump people, ask them something challenging. Like, even on this podcast, I dare you just ask me things that are challenging that you may not understand. And I'll do my best to give you the answers.
Oh man. Wow. Way to put me on the spot there, Tony. I'll certainly do my best. Okay. So why improv? What made you decide that was something that you wanted to start doing?
Oh, improv comedy. Yeah. So for context, I finished a 1-year improv comedy school here in Houston.
Yeah.
Just this past 6 months ago, I finished that. And the main reason was that public speaking to me was the thing that made me really nervous, or just feeling insecure about myself back then. And I never wanted to be on camera or stages or anything like that. I was always the MVP, building things in the background, hiding behind my corporate logo. And I'm sure that someone's listening or watching to this, or they're probably resonating with that. They probably built some successful things being the MVP. So I just was really uncomfortable just based on my own insecurities and things like that. And growing up and, having I have a vitiligo, I have a skin condition. So I'm covered with spots. And so people are always looking at me and like, what's wrong with your face and things like that. So I just did my best most of my life to avoid that. And just, it was really highly competitive in the background. And
Mm.
so the first thing I did was going through public speaking through Toastmasters and hiring a speaking coach and doing the reps and doing the videos, because I realized I had a message to get out there and I need to quit being, scared of it. And I need to quit, worrying about potential criticism, because that's going to happen regardless if we're doing good or bad. Like, you're always going to have critics. So comedy to me was almost a natural progression from public speaking. I think that once you understand the fundamentals of public speaking, the stage presence, eye contact, vocal inflections, crowd work, hand gestures, all these different things that we use, storytelling, these are skills that we learn in public speaking training. Well, comedy really is the difference, because when we're training to be a public speaker, we're always focused on our character. So we enhance our voice, we have our appearance, we have our mannerisms. Like, it's always about you.
Mm-hmm.
When you do improv, you don't get to be you anymore. Whoever is on that stage with you can assign your character. So if you got on the stage with me, Angie, and I said, "Hey, you're a muscular 85-year-old grandpa," you would have to act like and speak like and think like a muscular 85-year-old grandpa. You would have to kind of go into that mode and play the character out. So we're no longer getting to rehearse ourselves. So there's another level of discomfort when you start to realize, like, oh man, I got to go out there and never know what's going to be said. And I have to react to what they say and come up with the next brick to build that wall, that storyline. And so there's a lot of challenges that go on with improv. And man, some of the people that do it exceptionally well, it's not slapstick. I think rookie, when we first get into improv, everybody's trying to get to the punchline, everybody's trying to do slapstick humor, it's acting dumb. It's all about more about motions and silly voices.
Mm-hmm.
But as you progress through improv, you start to realize it's a very intellectual comedy, and that when we have callbacks and references to things that were said 10 minutes ago, the audience realizes and they laugh about that. But it's always about very witty, intellectual comeback type humor versus slapstick, just antics.
Yeah, I mean, I think about Drew Carey and Wayne. I forget what his last name is, but they made it look so seamless and so easy. And they're naturally funny guys, but the wit and the ability to go into character was amazing. And it just seemed very easy for them, for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. You mean Wayne Brady, right?
Yeah, Wayne Brady. That's what
he's amazing. The guy is amazing.
Yeah.
The level he was at such a high level of that. Think about that, was he could come up with rap songs and full songs
Yeah.
like on the fly, and the lyrics were like pretty damn good. And he would sing these things. You're like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Like off
Yeah.
the fly.
Yeah. Well, and there again is that quick thinking, that wit that not everybody has. You know, you throw them something and they're just like, you know, they got to process it. They don't have that type of quick thinking. Do you think
Yeah.
your engineering helps with that, like the thinking, the dissecting process quickly?
I would say that my quick thinking's probably declined since my earlier years as we get older, right? But you know, I'm 50, so I think that I have to pause a little bit to kind of formulate, but it may be intentional. I may be thinking of a better way to react instead of just kind of coming out right away. So
Okay. And how do you, I mean, I admire you for doing that, because I don't think that I would ever do something like that, or could do something like that. I don't know. Maybe I could. Maybe I should just
you could
throw
definitely
myself
do it.
out there and
It's
do it.
you're a fitness person. You understand. We like to be uncomfortable, right? There's no
Yeah.
growth being easy and complacent. There's no growth. We go to the gym. What are you going to go do like a couple sets until you kind of feel like tired and then stop? Like, no, like if you want to grow your muscles, you got to tear those things down and be really uncomfortable, feel the weight, the just the stress that's on your body. And then you know that the growth always occurs on the other side. Well, that also same concept applies to anything mental or
Yeah.
anything that makes you uncomfortable. So let's say if you're afraid of getting into an altercation, well, you should go take some martial arts, get prepared for that, become familiar with that, and then you won't have that fear anymore. If you have a fear of heights, go hire someone to teach you to get over that. You can definitely get over it. Many people have done it. I had stage fright. I hired people to help me get over that, and now I stand on big stages. So anything that you're afraid of, realize that that's pretty big, and it's a big flashing indicator really that that's the growth opportunity, and that we should lean into those opportunities instead of keep hiding from them, because most of us, we just hide from those opportunities our entire lives until something occurs in our life where we go, why I keep hiding from this? Like that's something that I should be tackling head on to go get ahead of, because I'm never going to improve until I get past this. And once you do, you realize like, man, it wasn't that hard. Like, why was I ever scared of that? That's so crazy. It's just consistency, repetitions, doing the work. And it's never easy, right? So improv to me is just like, it's something just to be uncomfortable with.
I love that. But do you feel like things have gone like with society where people don't really want to be uncomfortable because they don't have to? And now there's just comfort in being comfortable and they don't really want to push outside those boundaries as much.
Yeah, I would say that's the description for the vast majority of people, unfortunately. I mean, I was in corporate for over 20 years and I worked with a lot of people that were highly intelligent,
Mhm.
well compensated, highly educated. They had all the check boxes, but they would never push themselves beyond a certain point. I remember I made this post on Facebook a week ago. I kind of shared an observance from 20 years of management and leadership. I remember when people would come in and they would interview really well, like the young engineers right out of school, they would interview well. They had all the grades. We were heavily recruiting them. They would come in, they would make a name for themselves. They would take bigger risks. You know, they would go in and do whatever it took. They really to support their company and try to get the promotions, because everybody wants to get the notoriety, the authority, the respect. They're trying to build that name for the industry, and they're doing all these things that it takes to get to there. And they finally get to that six-figure mark around, we start making around 10,000 a month,
Mhm.
just throw a number out there. They kind of stopped taking risks. They quit doing things that would keep their name on people's mouths. They just kind of blended in with the cubicle farm and kind of just did their thing. And they were good employees, but they weren't doing what they did to get to the level that they achieved. So then they would come back to you in 5, 6 years and go, hey man, how come I haven't been promoted to manager yet? And it's like, well, do you remember when you made, junior project engineer, or you made it to project engineer? Yeah. Like, what were you like back then? Like, you took care of yourself, you dressed better, you did whatever it took. You were learning, you were hungry for knowledge, you were always asking for more responsibilities back then. So be honest with yourself. In the last 5 years, is that still you? Have you started to put yourself out there? Have you taken care of yourself? Are you really showing up like you used to? And I find that most people were actually better versions of themselves when they wanted to get to some level of comfort. And then they declined and hit that plateau and cruise control once they get there. And then it takes someone like me or yourself that looks at them and go, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to do this for the next 40 years and just die? Or are you going to try to keep pushing a little harder to see what you can actually achieve? And that's why most people just kind of get that comfortable level.
Yeah, they just get complacent. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, I wonder if this coincides with a lot of people now they get married, now they have kids, and they just settle into
Yeah.
just, that type of lifestyle where they quit that pushing because now it's just maintaining. I wonder if that has a lot to do with it as well.
I think it has a lot to do with it. I mean, my wife, we've been together 21 years,
Yeah.
and we both take care of ourselves, and we both have pride and confidence, and we always want to make sure that each person feels the affection and love and the respect. And I can't tell you how many friends of mine that have got married because the husband or the wife let themselves go, and they're basically never having sex, and they're basically just roommates at some point, and they're just there because the kids are still in school. And then as soon as the kids graduate, we see a lot of divorces happen when kids turn 18. You see that? And it's like, why is that? That's terrible. Like, ask yourself that if you're in a relationship right now, is the person that's with you, are they still in a relationship with the same version of you that they got involved with, or a lesser version of the version of you, right? And
Yeah.
I hate to say it, I'd say most of them are lesser. And unless you've done a consistent and you had a lot of awareness of just improving yourself over time, over years, and trying to take care of yourself, gain new knowledge, do some exciting things, take people out, go on dates, those kind of things, go travel, go explore the world, then you're probably not the same person that they met when you met. And I get that we're all going to evolve, we're all going to change, but it should be for the better, not the worse.
Yeah, and again, there goes that complacency. It's just comfortable, it's easy, and there's not as much effort put into themselves or the relationship because it's just assumed at that point. And I think once that happens, it can ruin things. And like you said, and then if one person is still wanting to grow and the other person is not, at some point, that gap is too great. And I feel like, I'm the person that's up here, and I wonder, as a person is not taking care of themselves and the other person is it a rebellious thing? Like, I just don't want to do that because you're super into it, or I can't possibly catch you, or I wonder what the psychology of that becomes.
Yeah, I think that it's a big overwhelm thing. So between 35 and 39, I kind of let myself go, not crazy, but I remember I sold my first company. I was 34, had a lot of money still sitting in the bank, right? And you start to think about this, you start hanging around with different people. And I've noticed this even at different socioeconomic levels. It's not just a poverty mindset, it's not just a middle class mindset. Actually, there's some people that are financially successful that still have a fixed, negative mindset about things.
Yeah.
And so I started getting nicer cars. I started joining some nicer car clubs, the Dodge Vipers and things like that. And some of the people in there are there because they have plenty of cash and it's a fun toy. And some people, you could tell they kind of scrimped and saved and their entire lives to have this used vehicle that they can be in the club. And I get it. There's two different types of people,
Yeah.
but you start to surround yourself with people in the car scene and you start to really validate each other's excuses. That's the best way to say that. So like, say that you're a 40-year-old dude and you got man boobs and a big old belly and you got a nice car and you're hanging out with a bunch of other dudes. And I bet you if you look around, they're probably all the same profile. They're probably all like 35 to 45 and they all got the same big belly and they all got good money in the bank account. They got a nice pickup truck and some weekend toys, right?
Yeah.
And so when you start to change yourself like I did at age 39 and start to get back in shape, people are like, oh man, you sure you want to do that? They see me do some deadlift or some kind of a bench press and like, oh man, you're going to hurt your back or you're going to
Ugh,
hurt your shoulder. They always do
oh,
the
I
negative
hate that.
stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And so what I find is that when we surround ourselves with people who validate the excuses, it's a lot like playing tennis. It's like you serve the excuse over, and instead of them calling you out on that bullshit, they just go, "Oh yeah, it's the same excuse I got," and they kind of hit it back over the net. And you
Yeah.
kind of back and forth the same excuse. Oh, I got no time to start a business, or I got no time to go to gym, or I got kids that keep me too busy. Like
Right.
those are all fucking excuses because that's a slap to the face to everybody that's been successful, that's had kids, that had to make time, just like everybody's got the same 24 hours. So why do you think that excuse is valid? And you get into the whole like, oh, I played football in high school. I got a bad knee. And I had all that shit. I had lower back pains. I
Right.
had a bad right knee. I had a bad left shoulder. And what I found is that when I started lifting heavier and doing that for months and months and months, and now it's been over 10 years, I've been very consistent. I don't have any pains. I literally have zero pains. I used to have foot pains. used to have all kinds of just aches and pains. Is because I think that we allow our bodies to deteriorate at some level that you don't have the bone density and your tendons are weak and your muscles are weak and you're carrying extra fat on your body. So it's we let ourselves go. That's the best and common phrase, but it's so true. And that was me at like 35, 39. And I remember, being 39, approaching 40 at that time, thinking, we still feel young inside. Like that's the secret most people don't realize. Like I'm 50, but I still feel like I'm in my 20s
Yep.
mentally. And I'm excited about life. And I know that, it's later in my life, but I'm excited. And the uncertainty, I just look forward to things. And guys, if you're younger and you're listening to this, you don't outgrow that mental state. You will never outgrow that mental state. You will always kind of think you're younger and feel younger if you take care of yourself. And what's going to really hurt your feelings is when you look in the mirror and you don't see that young person anymore. And especially if you let yourself go and you still feel young inside, but you're looking at a body that's not even close. So that overwhelm, Angie, is why most people don't go back to the gym. Because let's just say you ate properly and didn't exercise, right? You just look average, okay, cool. That's what I call zero, right? That's base zero. And if you let yourself go, you gain weight and you get weak, you're negative. If you're eating healthy and you're physically fit and you're exercising, you're positive. So most people that sit negative, any level of negative, because this is where my mind was, I looked at that and go, man, it's going to take a lot of work and 6 to 12 months just to get back to zero.
Yeah.
Like just to get to average, I'm going to have to go to the gym 3 to 4 days a week and work out 45, 60 minutes a day. It's like, it's going to take me 6 months at the minimum to get back to zero. And that just doesn't sound very enticing. That like getting back to zero to do all that work. So that is why most people will not go back to the gym. That's why most people will not break their bad habits or they'll start eating healthy. It just takes so much time and work.
Yeah.
But if they would just do that, realize that this is that the same amount of time is going to pass regardless. So if you fuck off and don't do anything for the next 6 months, guess what? That 6 month marker is going to come back around and you're going to be in the same situation. So time is going to pass the same. So it's your choice if you want to arrive at that window in a better version of yourself or not.
Yeah. Well, and that's the key. And I think some people, they, like you said, they find people who will agree with them. Well, it's your age. It's where you're at. This is what it's like for us at this age. Like I hear that so often. I'm like, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I just wanted to back up and concur with you a bit. I had a really bad back injury when I had my daughter. I'd put on way too much weight. I was very unhealthy and unfit, and I threw my back out. I was in chiropractor for years and years and years, always just sort of like, trying to fix it. And when I started CrossFit, it was the same thing. Like you said, oh, you have this back injury. I'm telling myself this, and chiropractor's telling me this, it's going to make things worse. And at first it kind of did. But then once I built my core strong enough, like going all the time, a couple of years into it, I went less and less and less. All of a sudden, my core is so strong that I haven't gone to the chiropractor in 5 years. I haven't had any injuries. I haven't had any problems. I have no aches. I have no pains, which is totally contrary to what everybody tries to convince you, which is you're just going to be stuck with this, managing it the rest of your life. So I absolutely agree. Like you got to shut out all of those people. That's usually coming from people that don't want to do the work themselves.
Angie, back when I was in my late 30s, I injured my lower back and it wasn't at the gym. You know what I was doing? I was picking up a trash can.
Yep.
Picking up a trash can that probably didn't even weigh 50 pounds, right? And I tweaked my back, and that's an injury that lasts weeks and weeks and weeks. And so you start to have that reinforcement of like, oh man, I'm getting older. And like, I threw my back out. Now I deadlift over 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Over 500 pounds. And it's because I strengthened my body over years and years and years to realize that I can be able to do that kind of stuff. It's not easy to do that, but every time I post a photo or a video of me doing that kind of weight, there's always somebody that comments. There's always going to be like, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, oh man, you're going to have bad hips when you're old. Oh man, you're going to injure your back. Like, and I'm looking at these people and I go look at their profiles like, you motherfucker, you probably have never been in shape in your entire life. Like you're more likely to pull your back tying your shoe because you can't see your feet than I am about lifting 500 pounds. So, people always give you the horror type, scare type things when they see you doing things that are things that they can't do. But if they realize this, if you would just go become stronger, you're actually less likely to be injured.
Less like or sick because your immune system is working and you're doing better. Yeah, I run into the same thing with people. And what I say is like, look, I would rather hurt myself trying to lift, 300 pounds than getting out of bed. So I'll take that chance all day, every day. But
Yep.
you also learn your body, you're not putting yourself into situations where you are going to hurt yourself or, with bad form or that sort of thing. You learn your limits, how far you can push, but also not to endanger yourself either. At
Right.
least if you have good body awareness, you shouldn't. I mean, stuff happens, but again, I'd rather have it happen in the gym than happen from getting out of bed.
Right.
Yeah. So when you work with people, you work on what, mindset, health, business, like all those things, right?
Yeah, we do. And the thing that's one thing I didn't understand that would occur that way that we talk about that. Cause I position myself as a business and a high performance coach for executives. So owners and CEOs. And, when I initially started doing this publicly about 5 years ago, I thought we were going to talk more about P&Ls and processes and systems and risk mitigation and hiring and leadership. And those are all key things that I had a lot of experience in. But what I find now is that 70% of the conversations with these clients are usually about themselves, about something that they're dealing with, a troubled employee, or maybe they've got a good employee that's, production wise, but he's an asshole to the rest of the employees, or, so it's usually leadership things or tough decisions, or, we find that business owners and especially entrepreneurs out there is that it's a lonely world because a lot of times your friends are not business owners.
Yeah.
And so you can't even have these hard, deep conversations. And sometimes these conversations we have with our clients, they wouldn't even have with their spouse because they don't want to have that kind of level of conversation. Maybe they're married to someone that doesn't understand business or leadership or tactical or strategy, things like that. And they just like, I don't want to take that home. So where you become is it's almost like a therapist without, going into the high, nothing like medical like that, but it's having hard conversations, making good choices, because I think a lot of times we have a lot of distractions and a lot of different options and things that we can do with our businesses. And most people kind of just get into that standstill moment. They're just looking at all the overwhelm of all the things. So we kind of learn how to prioritize things, make better decisions on a financial things, how to remove emotion also from money. I think a lot of times people, and I experienced this myself early in my career, was we have this emotional attachment to certain values of money. And so we make bad decisions based on our emotions versus logic. So to give you an example of that, when I was managing contracts, let's say early on my career, I remember getting my first contract. It was like $1 million I had to manage. And I was like, oh my God, that's so much money. And I was super nervous about making any decisions. And
Yeah.
it just ate me up. I just like, oh, this is scary. Later on, I was managing hundreds of millions of dollars. Like I had a portfolio of 200 million. I was managing 75 people, international, a lot of things going on. And by that point, 20 plus years in, I had to learn how to remove my emotions from money. So, if I see commas and zeros and stuff, it doesn't phase me. I'm going to make the right decision. And I think that's one thing that small business owners struggle with, because they look at their pricing structure. They look at, how much do you think we should charge for this? And it's like, well, is it a commodity? Is it a market thing? Is it something that people can compete with? Are you the best? Are you the lowest price category? There's a lot of different things, but we tend to come at things with pricing based on our own comfort level. So if you were to go hire a service or buy a product based on yourself, what you would spend on that, that's not always the right answer for your business.
Right.
And it takes a lot of awareness and coaching to get people past that, because money and pricing and things like that are all relative, and that you may sell something for $1,000 and think that's, oh my God, it's super expensive and nobody's going to buy that. And someone else may look at that and go, hey, can I have 10 of those?
Yeah.
So it's all relative.
Or it might be priced so low that they don't see the value in it in their world.
That's right.
And you have to price it higher because they're like, oh, that must be more valuable.
Yeah, we attract what we put out there. And if you are complaining about your customers, it's probably because the price point or the product quality that you're putting out there is attracting that type of customer, or it's your message, right? So think about this. If you're out there on social media, especially when we create our messages and our personal brand, we're both working on that kind of stuff. If you're always spouting anger, if you're always angry about something, if you're always bitching and complaining about something or the government, or you're always angry, you're always just negative,
Yeah.
guess what? Your audience is going to be a bunch of those people. It's going to be a bunch of negative, complaining, angry people. And you have to ask yourself from a business perspective, is that who I want as my audience? Because that's what you're going to get. People attract what they put out there. So, those of you out there with businesses, like, be really careful about the message that you're putting out. You're just going to get more of those people. Now, if angry people are your typical customer and that's what you want, hell yeah, go get super angry and go turn it up a few notches because you want more of those customers. But, we get what we attract.
I don't know who would want angry customers, but I guess that is a strategy.
CNN and Fox. I mean, that's what they want.
You're right.
They want angry customers. CNN is not trying to win Fox viewers over. Yep. Fox is not trying to win CNN viewers over. They just know which buttons to push and which levers to pull to make their audience angry,
right,
infuriated. So they'll share their articles so they can generate more advertising revenue and make their billions of dollars. Right. So it's all a game.
And I'm shocked that it's still working. Like, didn't we learn a lot in the last couple of years? Like, I am shocked that people still buy into that and haven't realized that they're being played.
No, it's confirmation bias. I mean, we can agree on a lot of things on both sides, just how it's presented. Like, you can say the same message two different directions based on your own audience, right? Yeah. And so if you go out there and try to make everybody the bad guy and we're the good guy, like, well, the other side's doing the same thing. Like, no one's going to win this argument. You're not going to change their opinions, but they know that that's how you generate ads. They put the shocking headlines, they put the shocking videos out there. They try to infuriate you because people that are just happy or, average, they're not going to get emotionally invested in whatever content they're putting out. So they're not going to share it. They're not going to tell their friends about it. They're not going to put it on Facebook. So I hate to say it, anger is what grabs the most attention. Anger and shock, the whole train wreck thing. Like, you can't drive by an accident while people rubbernecking. And so it's like shock and anger, unfortunately, are the most things that get shared. And that's one other reason I like the comedy thing, because comedy also gets shared. And if you can learn comedy and learn how to do it well, like, that's another avenue to attract the right customer. I want people that are happy to be in my group.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, some of the funniest comedy to me is the one that parallels like life, like South Park. Oh my God, they get away with everything and they're always just making fun of whatever's happening in the world, and they're able to get away with it because that's what they do. It cracks me up. It's like funny, but it's kind of sad, but it's really funny.
That's it. You can't cancel culture on comedy. Like, comedians just don't care. They're like, okay, cool, cancel me.
Yeah.
Our mentor, Andy Frisella, he talks about that on the show, where every time he's been canceled, like, his show audience has increased. It just raises your awareness to another level. So if your intention is right, goes back to that word, if you're doing things for the right reasons and you say things that are highly polarizing, like I often do, you're going to grow an audience. And that's cool because you're doing it for the right reasons. Now, if you're just going out there to antagonize people and start fights and be an asshole, and then you get the cancel or the attack back, then you kind of deserve what you put out there. Again, your intentions were off. So, if you are doing things that you're truly believing in and doing it for the right reasons, don't back down from people that are trying to disagree and cancel you, because you're doing it for the right reasons.
Right. And, they often say, there is no bad press. I mean, any kind of press you get is good. So take it.
Yeah.
I notice on your posts, it kind of cracks me up. You'll say things like that just to sort of, I don't know why, but it's just a statement. And then I watch people respond. Like, you said something about, the Super Bowl being a waste of 4 hours or something like that. And all of a sudden everyone's like, what? Oh my gosh. And there's just like so much emotion attached to it. And it's funny. You're
funny.
really good at doing that.
And the thing is, like, I'm very